Welcome to Gold Derby. I'm senior editor Denton Davidson here with BAFTA-winning actress Naomi Ackie, who stars as Whitney Houston in Casey Lemon's biopic about the superstar I Want to Dance with Somebody. Naomi, I've been waiting for this interview. There's been so many actors that had to have been gunning for this.
Yeah.
Talk about that audition process and what made you want to go for it, and then what was that process like for you?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being honest, when the role came along as a, just to send in a self-tape and give it a try, my initial thing was like, are you guys absolutely insane? I was like, I was like, how would I even go about trying to emulate someone so amazing, and so big? Whitney Houston is one of those people that feels like you're playing a superhuman. I don't know how to do that. My agents really kind of, God bless them, very encouraging, were like, Nay, just give it a shot. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but we think you can do it. So I started sending self-tapes in, and I was very surprised every time they came back and was like, can we have another? The process took about 4 months, I would say. And I think there's something, I'm quite lucky that actually my mind was so in the realm of it feels too big and it feels quite insane that I just wasn't anxious about the result, because I thought I knew what the result would be. The real anxiety came when I got the part and I was like, oh my God, oh my gosh. So I hadn't really thought about, how big it was, because it just didn't, in that realm of if I got it, it just didn't seem like a possibility, to be honest.
So then you do get it, and then how do you begin to prepare, both physically and emotionally, once you land the part to, embody Whitney Houston?
Yeah, physically, I think that was the first part. It was working with a personal trainer, dropping about 30 pounds. It was looking at her movements. I worked with my amazing friend and also movement coach, Polly Bennett, who's worked on Elvis Presley. She's working on Bob Marley right now. She did Bohemian Rhapsody too. And so working with her about how to tell a story through your body really started to inform what we can kind of infer from the way Whitney moves about her as a person. That was, for me, the most change I felt. It felt like I was understanding something deeper when playing her. Then the other part was, I spent about 6 months with a dialect coach, really getting specific about the vowels and the consonants, yes, but also the history of the accent and where it came from and why. And so I could get as specific as possible, because again, that's clues into who Whitney is. Trying to work on vocal quality as well, to sound like you're a singer, to sound like you're getting older. For me, it was fascinating. It's the stuff that I dream of having the time to do. And luckily I was just like, I'm going to take off, all the time I need before filming. I'm not going to take on another job, so I can just concentrate on this.
And she was interesting too, because she sounds a little different in interviews than she does at home. She'll like straighten up and put on a show for you.
Very the thing is, finding the similarities between us is that I do the same thing. I code shift. So my public facing self, I'm from northeast London. When I'm around my family and stuff, it's very, I talk very, very different. And that was interesting too, because then you can figure out who she's comfortable with. Who is she if she's talking to public facing, people, how does that change? And it teaches you about different dynamics in her relationships. So again, that was all really fascinating. And it's just about collecting all these little clues that you can find from YouTube, from talking to people who knew her, from the things that you imagine up. So much of this was about imagination too, because I can't actually know everything that was going on in her mind, and I can't ever kind of say for a fact that what I portrayed was a thing, but my imagination played a part in filling those spaces.
And part of that too is, you were born, probably when she was at the peak of her career. So
Yeah.
you missed that. Like you
Yeah.
weren't there to witness all of that firsthand.
No.
So, what about her biography, I guess, sort of surprised you the most when you started this?
I mean, I think what surprised me the most, and I think it sounds quite simple now that I think about it, but I because she's called a diva, and my traditional view of a diva is the dresses and the sparkles and the money and the fur and all of that. I didn't realize how much of a kind of normal, everyday, grounded girl she was. I didn't, growing up, it was, I never saw that part of her because, like you say, I was there when she was already at the peak. Learning things about her family, where she grew up, how different she was, how she's beautifully different when she was by herself. I've even found some like gorgeous like home videos and stuff on YouTube that are around and stuff, and that part surprised me because I think my initial idea of her was that she would, I don't know, walk around in like floor length dressing gowns with fur on them, and I don't know, just a very furry small dogs, and that's not the case at all.
What was the most difficult part of her to capture, or maybe the most difficult scene to shoot throughout this process?
I think for me it was like when we're following Whitney kind of hit rock bottom, the stuff around her father, the stuff around the drugs, it's important to keep that as sensitive as possible. I think holding on to Whitney's dignity is so important because so much of it was stripped away from her at the time that the media was really like digging in and around her life. Looking back on that stuff, it feels so unkind that when I was doing that part, I wanted to portray the inner world, but not necessarily show all of that stuff. We don't need to see that. And that's, I think like that was harder for me because how do you climb your way out of that? Once you go there with a character, how do you figure out how to get them back on solid ground? So that was, if trying to place where she was emotionally in scenes where she couldn't necessarily show it was like a bit of a strange one to negotiate.
And the media focused so much on those dark times, they sort of ignored in the end what a workhorse she was for the first, there was a reason she had the reputation and the name that she had.
There was a reason, absolutely. I think that's a really good point. When it's funny, like kind of seeing that circus of media, because it's like the build you up and then wait for you to do something wrong and then can't wait to tear you down. And to know that for a few years, not for everyone, but that there was a kind of feeling of the feeling that we're left with is about the difficulty that she went through. Her illness of addiction feels unjust, considering how much good she left us in her music, in her energy, in what her songs taught us. So I think trying to, in performance, trying to lean more towards that and mentioning the difficult stuff was a definite negotiation for me, and I didn't want to get the balance wrong.
I don't know how many looks you went through in this film or how many wigs and hairstyles, but it's a lot. Did you have a favorite era or performance that you were a part, like when you look back and think of it, what was the most fun?
Oh God, probably like the I Want to Dance with Somebody era. Okay. I took that wig. I took the wig. I have about 5 at home. But yeah, like I think that kind of around the 80s was my favorite because I was born in 91, and so like I have no kind of like concept of that time. It felt like something so different to me. So like the kind of big fluffy hair and the costumes are so colorful and amazing, and the shoulder pads, oh my goodness. I kept on like in fittings, I'd just be like, is this ours? Like, do we own this one? Can I take it with me? Because that'd be great. I could just have a whole Whitney wardrobe and I'd be set.
And throughout the film, and there's a lot of performances, and she is the voice. So I don't care who you are, there's no imitating that. I mean,
Nope.
her voice has to be used. But there are moments of the younger Whitney in church. You know, what was that like for you? Filming those moments and, you know, having a little bit of your own voice heard as well, because you can sing.
Thank you. It was really like, it was quite weird for me because the times I felt most confident is when I'm singing with Whitney. It feels like there's a security blanket there. It feels like she's in the room. When I was singing on my own, I was slightly, I had get slight like stage fright. My favorite though, to be fair, like was doing the choir scene, you know, and I remember walking in. Ricky Minor, who was Whitney's friend and music director, has been a part of helping us make this film, and he had arranged the choir himself, and he was there on the day. And so when I'm singing, he's like, "Could you go?" And like he's just like, "Don't think about how to sound, you know, let go and just let it out." And actually, like for me, in terms of finding my own voice, because I've never thought of myself as a singer. I think I'm just someone who can sing, but a singer is someone who can really communicate a story through their voice, and I don't necessarily have that. But that was a day that I was like, oh, this is maybe a little bit easier than I thought it'd be if you have Ricky Minor as your music director. And it's all
Doesn't
good.
hurt.
Doesn't hurt at all.
And you nail her mannerisms. I mean, the performance I think of is Home, which was her first performance on national television.
Yes.
And, you know, you really get that performance down. Like, how do you balance those moments where, you know, this is on YouTube, millions of people have seen the performance. So what do you want to imitate there? And then at what point do you sort of shift and say, okay, then I need to do my own thing?
Yeah, I think the pattern that I would start to build is like, while working with Polly, was we need to get the photo finish movement down pat, like down to every hand movement, symmetrical, like everything like that, and practice it enough that I don't have to think about it. And so on the day, there was a space for spontaneity, and there was space for me to enjoy the performer part of me, enjoy the movements and feel them out, because you can learn a set of moves, but if you're not filling them out with meaning, it doesn't translate. So that was actually, like, I mean, for me, the performances were the best things to do. It was joyful, and it was just for a millisecond I felt like a pop star. And yeah, it was great. That is one of my favorite performances that I did and that I've seen her do. Home is like, I mean, she's 19 at that time. She's 19 and she has that voice, and it's quite. I still can't get my head around how mature her voice is, for her age and for her frame. She was so small, you know, so slim and so powerful. I mean, I was still in constant awe, man. I can't even lie. Like every time I talk about Whitney Houston, I'm just like, how did she do it? How did she work that hard? How did she do it for so many years? Like I'm just fangirling now. Yeah.
You had the full support of the estate behind this film. So who did you speak to throughout the process or gain insight on her? I mean, did you talk to Clive Davis? Was it her family? Like who specifically had the best stories?
Oh man, I would say it was, all of them did. They, like Pat Houston was heavily involved, and Gary Houston, I've met him twice, and I think for him, I think it was quite, you know, I don't want to speak for him, but I felt like this is so significant, and I could imagine that it would be quite strange to have someone dressed as your little sister, playing your little sister when you had such a close relationship. Talking to Clive Davis was like talking to an encyclopedia of music and people that he's worked with, and then just like his knowledge of Whitney. There was an overall when anyone talks about Whitney, and what's crazy is that while we were working, you know, it's a film crew, so people have crossed Whitney's path. You know, there's people that were working in the makeup trailer in particular who had worked with Whitney. So like these lovely kind of vignettes would pop up out of nowhere of moments that people had bumped into Whitney at a hotel or at a party or wherever. The biggest thing I've pulled away from talking to the family and friends of Whitney is how warm she was as a person. Everyone seemed to talk about her in this, like, that she was so enigmatic and so full of life and so, yeah, full. She was full and she had so much more to give, you know. So I started to, when I was talking to people, just watch their faces. You know, some of what they say is important, right? And it matters, but also watching how someone's face change when they talk about a person can tell you so much too. And yeah, with the family and with Clive and with Ricky, I was just absorbing that energy. Yeah.
Speaking of Clive, Stanley Tucci plays him in the film, and I love your scenes together. I mean, he transforms as well. He's so good in this. What was it like working with him and just going toe to toe with an actor like that in those scenes?
Oh gosh, it was mad, dude. I was like, I remember him coming in on the first day, and I was so starstruck. The first scene we did was actually it was a pretty tough scene, our first acting scene. You know, it's at a point where Whitney has some changes to make in her life. And I just remember, like, he'd be talking to me, and I just was slightly like off, just like looking at him, like, is that you? Like, I've just watched him for so many years. The great thing about Stanley is that his energy is so calm and so confident that you can't help but feel the same too. And he's such a welcoming actor that in the end, like, the days would go by when we were performing, and like he was really great at improvisation too. So like I started to try and play with improv too, and like it became really playful and light, which I think highlighted their real relationship really well. This kind of business relationship, but also this kind of, you know, father-daughter-esque relationship. And I had actually written a letter to Stanley to ask him to do it.
Really?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if he remembers it, but like, you know, it was in talks, and I was like, what can I do to help? And I was like, should I write him a letter? So I like wrote him a letter being like, Mr. Stanley Tucci, I would love to play. Like, it was, I don't know if he remembers it, but yeah, I was like, I would do anything to work with Stanley Tucci. Again, like, I want to do anything with him. So good.
And the film also goes into her friendship with Robyn Crawford, and those two were just ridiculed in the press. This is one of her best friends through the majority of her life. Can you talk about the bringing empathy and understanding into that story, because the film really does a beautiful job of that.
Thank you. I think, you know, at the core of it, that relationship was so beautiful, and it was a friendship. And I've read, you know, Robyn Crawford's book about her life with Whitney. And it's funny because I think, like, we as a people are so quick to kind of need to put something into a box, and their relationship was long lasting, and they were friends who loved each other. And I don't have any right to put a name on what they were, who they were to each other. All I know is that they meant the world to each other, and to highlight that as one of the highs, you know, one of the best relationships that she had in her life was a real joy. It was also a real joy to act with Nafisa, because, you know, who plays Robyn Crawford, because we kind of felt that similar connection while we were working. There was just so much love between them, and so much support, especially from Robyn to Whitney, which I'm extremely admirable of, because in studying Whitney's life, it seems like there was always something to do, somewhere to go, somewhere to perform, some business needing to be done, something needing to be negotiated. So to know that she had someone like Robyn there for such a long time, you know, you just go, thank goodness, as well as, you know, everyone else who was in her life.
What have you learned from Whitney Houston through this process that you can take with you in your own life?
Leave joy wherever you go. You know, I remember, like, you know, my family at a funeral, at a wedding, at a christening, just hanging out, we'll play Whitney Houston and we'll be dancing around the community hall that we're dancing in, or the flat that we're dancing in. And that's joy and it's connection, and that's what she gave us. And so I think a part of me is like, that is one of the biggest things that she's left me with, is like, how do you use your gift to leave joy?
And what did you physically take other than 5 wigs? Did you get anything from the set? Like what is your
my memorabilia?
Yeah.
I have 2 things. I have 3 things.
Okay.
One is the producers on my first day got me a bottle of Moet, as Clive did for Whitney. So they got me a bottle of Moet, which I actually I didn't open until the last day. I had just made a deal with myself not to open it till the last day. I took a jacket that was made for a scene that is just like the most beautiful jacket ever. And it's very 80s, so it's right up my alley. And then the last thing I took was I was given by one of the makeup women, Janina, who actually worked with Whitney on a particular day. She gave me a lip gloss that was Whitney's, that belonged to Whitney when she worked with her.
Wow.
And so at home I have this really lovely gold lip gloss that just is sat with the Moet and then the lip gloss. And that is the most precious thing probably in my whole entire house.
And just as a final question, what do you hope audiences will come out of the film thinking or rethinking, and how they view Whitney Houston?
Oh man, I hope that the audience leave with joy about Whitney as a person, with a new energy to look at her music and look at her life, and maybe a invitation to look at Whitney through a different lens and bring her off of the pedestal, because no one should be put on a pedestal. We're all humans and we can do amazing things, but being a human is enough. So I think taking her down and then really seeing how amazing she was would be my hope.
Well, I have to say I went to a screening, and when the credits were rolling, I heard someone behind me say, that reminded me how much I loved her, and I want to go YouTube her performances. So I think you nailed it in that aspect. And Naomi, congratulations on the film. It was a tremendous task that you took on, and you absolutely nailed it. And people watching this interview can go to goldderby.com, make your Oscar predictions, check out more interviews with this year's top contenders. And to you, Naomi, best of luck with everything. And thanks for chatting with Gold Derby today about I Want to Dance with Somebody.
Thank you.